The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Welcome to Sarah's Country, a dedicated community that has been telling me is building around the show. It's blossomed from the dark depths of lockdown and blossoming into your future of rural media, your daily rural fix on all things farming, food and fibre here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'd love to know in the comments below, be honest, what on earth are you doing actually watching or listening to this? Now, what is it that you love? Just one sentence, that'd be great. You know, the farming community, I think, would love the same from Jacinda, dropping into their DMs sometime and do the same thing. But no, it was a powder day at Cardi's. If you're new to the show, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart and a certain little Irishman's heart as well for taking the time to join us, whether it's tonight live, wherever you are across social media, Monday through Thursday from 7 o'clock. Thanks to the glorious family at Farmers Weekly for making this possible. Or if you really love us on demand, on podcast, while you're driving along wherever you are in paradise. Now, I have some breaking and sad news for you all up first. May as well cut to the chase. You know, rip off the Band-Aid. I've spent the weekend wallowing in my box of tissues over a certain Irishman that I know you've all come to love and know is going to leave us for greener shamrocks. Did you like that, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, it was a wee bit cheesy. I don't know.
It's not going to be next week, though, is it, Joel?
Oh, no, we got a wee while yet. I couldn't just up and leave. Everything would fall apart.
You're right about that. Now, Suze and Rosalie, your fangirls, they've already sent in some cards and lots of heart emojis I can see down here underneath. You're going to be sorely missed, Joel, and we do have a couple of months left, though, do we?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can save the goodbyes for a wee while. We're good for now.
All right, I'm going to drag this out because this is a slow, long blow for me. I mean, it's that accent, isn't it, that we're all going to miss. And it has to be one of my favourite accents in the world. And before I let you know on what's coming up on tonight's show, I thought let's have a little fun and chat about accents with our live audience throughout the show. You know, there is that, everybody's got their favourite accents. Everybody's got, the ones that just make them cringe. What is it? What is that accent that makes you weak at the knees more than Old Spice? Or, the worst accent on the planet that makes your skin crawl. Joel, mine, I reckon an Italian accent. It gets me every time, that Mystique, Fabio, long grey ponytail, white horse kind of accent. What about the Kiwi accent? Does that do it for you?
I mean, I quite like the Kiwi accent, but it's when people talk about an Irish accent and how much they love it, it's funny because there's such a range. Like, you could have like a nice sing-songy Irish accent. I've got quite a fairly northern accent, but then you can also have the worst northern accents. Like, if you come from East Belfast, you probably talk like this. It's very in your nose, and it's not the most attractive noise in the world.
What about not Father Ted, Jack?
Oh,
you had a grandfather that was like him.
Well, not quite like him, but he has my Granda Rock has a fairly thick accent, so he does.
Can't see you, Joe.
Oh, there we go. he has a fairly thick accent. It's a wee bit, and it's quite low and it's quite mumbly, and he's from Ballymena, so he's around Ballymena.
I know a lot of Southland farmers that sound exactly the same thing. Now, add to the comments below. I want to keep an eye out across the show. What is it? What's your favourite accent on earth? Is it the Southland accent? Or is it, of course, someone from Boston? Or is it someone from Scotland? I'm not going to try them because I'm not actually that good. Or what is those ones that make you cringe? Is it the Aussie accent or the Essex accent? Let's just have some fun. I had a comment from a friend today that she was very gutted about Joel's resignation. She said, I hope you find another producer who has a mum who will also be a big fan of the show as well. Now, let's kick off what matters to our food and fibre producers across New Zealand this week from our experienced team of journalists at Farmers Weekly. The media thrives like mould in a Dunedin villa on negative things facing the many sectors across this country. Yet here at Cirrus Country, with open minds, we search through the dark with our torch for optimism. And this week I landed on a great blog post from the team at NZAB titled "The Game Might Have Changed, but the opportunities for growth haven't." Managing Director for NZAB, Scott Wishart, is going to join us after 7:20 to discuss and take any of your questions on how those banks are getting on and how to navigate them. After 7:30, we're going to find out if we are making any progress with our very vital essential workers not being allowed back into this country, as are our Avatar movie crew and the America's Cup crew. Throwing money at training is one thing, but that doesn't get the cows milked in a month's time or the crops sown. More on that from National Party spokesman for Agriculture, David Bennett, and I'd love your questions for him in the comments below as well. Then to close the show, we're going to be speaking to the newly elected Vice President for Federated Farmers, Karen Williams, who is in Wellington tonight with her new President, Andrew Hoggard. And we're going to find out what's ahead for the organisation, who has been shut out of the odd collaborative group. How will they keep their important work front and centre going into a very important election? To kick it off, one group who is sick to death of being shut out in the cold is the wool industry, and farmers are petitioning the government now to walk the talk with natural, sustainable wool carpet and insulation mandatory in government buildings, and of course KiwiBuild. Amy Blaikie from Southland is up next in Cirrus Country. This is Cirrus Country.
The recipe for perfect beef and lamb. Take one small fresh country. Make sure it's nice and remote. Now, keep it at the ideal temperature all year round. Next, mix in the farmers. They go perfectly with the nature of this unique place. Add regular sprinkles of rain to really bring out the lush meadow grass. Then let your animals happily graze on this grass all day, every day. And there you have it, New Zealand, the perfect recipe for beef and lamb. Taste pure nature.
Fantastic. We've got a full house tonight. I can see across all of these social media platforms where I can see the eyeballs and the love hearts and comments along. Lindy Nelson is sitting there drinking some ha-ha bubbles with her very good friend Mavis Mullins, and they're sitting there ching-chinging to themselves around the wonderful Agri-Women's Development Trust graduates that are featuring tonight on Cirrus Country, and I think doing them both proud. Give us a thumbs up if I am right, Lindy and Mavis. And we've got a really great new fan in Ethel Whitaker, which I've just done a little bit of a Facebook stalk, who's a Kiwi living over in Melbourne and loving watching Cirrus Country. Pretty cool. Wherever you are around the world as well as around the country, let us know where you are. Tonight we're talking about accents. What is your favourite? What sort of makes your sort of spine tingle or absolutely makes your skin crawl? I'd love to know, because it's a lot of fun and it's really weird where our preferences come from. You know, we grew up with a lot of American TV here in New Zealand, but of course a lot of British comedy as well. So I'd love to know. But now we get terrible things, Joel, like Geordie Shore. Ugh. Anyway. We've got more important things to talk about here on Serious Country tonight. One of those topics you know is dear to my heart is New Zealand wool, because it's locally grown, natural, renewable, and of course there is pressure mounting around why isn't it going into our publicly funded buildings and KiwiBuild homes. This is amongst the news that crossbred wool has never been so low. Now we're around the $1.40 a kilo mark. My friend Blaikie has said he's never seen that so bad in his entire career. It is environmentally friendly and renewable, biodegradable, sustainable, fire resistant, acoustically excellent, and healthier for air quality as well as energy efficient. All before we even talked about storing carbon. So, let's buy petrol and let our babies roll around on it in our KiwiBuild homes instead. And let's claim a zero carbon bill and use the word healthy across every government slogan. And what about a wool working group report that's been in the making for 3 years but still not good enough to release? Let's do this, New Zealand. Let's get wool carpet and insulation across our entire government build, because that is what is important to supporting our own and backing your backyard. Joining us right now from Southland is the wonderful woman I'm so proud of, Amy Blaikie, who is farming down there and has put together this petition to the government, which is gaining huge momentum. And it's only been around for 48 hours or 72 hours, I believe. Welcome to Serious Country, Amy, and thank you so much. Tell us, what was that moment for you where you said, right, enough's enough, someone's got to get on and make a petition?
Sort of disbelief that no one had sort of done it before. I actually Googled and said, surely someone's done this, and why not? Everyone's so passionate about wool and they know what great attributes it's got, so it seems, everyone says it's a no-brainer. Why isn't it in these buildings?
Oh, absolutely. And I've heard that Minister Damien O'Connor believed that it was potentially because it was more expensive. Could that have been one of the reasons? Or many are quick to judge that wool doesn't wear and last?
I think those are pretty outdated views of it. So even if Mr. Damien O'Connor's view is that it's expensive, but surely people are looking at the whole life cycle now and what it can give back to the environment. Can't really decompose something that's made of petrochemicals, or you wouldn't want to, would you?
No, certainly not. Let's hear from yourself, to our audience, a bit of your background, your farming journey and your passion for the wool industry.
So I grew up in a market garden, so farming vegetables, which is totally different from what I'm doing now. I ended up meeting and marrying a lovely farmer from South Otago, and we grow sheep and beef wool on our farm. That's how I ended up. And passion for wool. We've got such a beautiful thing, stuff. It's like, it's fluffy and soft and gorgeous. Why doesn't anyone want to use it? It's just amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to us, and it's just been a long, slow decline. Now, Amy, you've been through the Agri-Women's Development Trust and stepping up yourself into some of these leadership roles to grab the sort of ram by the horns to guide this. Is that something of interest to you?
It's sort of just something that's fallen into place, actually. We did the Understanding of Farming Business with Agri-Women's Development Trust, and that sort of kick-started desire to do more for communities and help more in the industry, and then carried on to do the next level course, which is amazing, and even tied up with a wonderful RMPP group of women who want to give back and do more in the industry.
The reason I'm leading into this question is because Lindy Nelson has asked me to ask you about leaning on you to go through the throes of putting this petition together. She said there's a funny story there.
Yeah, we'll have wines in Wellington.
Too many wines in Wellington. What goes on tour stays on tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so what is the next step? Talk me through this. It's new to me in terms of doing a petition, standing in front of a primary production select committee. We do have David Bennett, who has been chair of that committee for many years. I'd love to know, how far you're going to take this through, and what is some of those questions you'd like us to put forward to the likes of David Bennett.
Great questions. Well, I've never done the process before. It's my first petition ever. So I'm sort of going step by step gradually. And thanks to amazing social media and a great response from everyone in the industry. Everyone's sort of filling the petition out and forwarding it to anyone they know, and everyone hopefully. So yeah, I'm just going to waiting to hear back from a few ministers I've emailed and take it from there.
What would you like from some of these MPs around the country to get in behind a cause like this?
To support it and make it happen, make that change. It's why is it obvious to everybody else in the industry, but not the ones running the country?
So we're sitting here at 3,160. This is 7:20 on Monday evening, and there is 32 days to go. So how is the best way for people to find this petition, to get in behind and sign it to support it?
It's great. It seems to be on a lot of Facebook pages, Instagram pages, or even just go onto the government website. You can look up petitions there and click on it and sign it.
Thank you so much, Amy, for taking the time to not just talk about it, but get on and walk the talk and creating this petition about New Zealand wool products being used in publicly funded buildings, in particular the KiwiBuild program. That's Amy Blaikie from Southland. And if you want to, head to Parliament's website, Google petition for New Zealand wool, and it comes up pretty quickly. Now, next up on Sarah's Country, we are going to talk about the availability of capital in this country. Is there some opportunities that we're as right in front of our nose that we are not seeing? There's one man that believes that there is more to COVID than the disruption of many industries, and that's Managing Director for NZAB, Scott Wishart. Up next. This is Sarah's Country.
We're a large deer farm and very proud deer farmer at that. I grew up here as a little boy. It is just an amazing lifestyle. I could never live in a city ever again. Just the big open spaces and just the peacefulness of it all. I think deer are very majestic, very intelligent animal. Having deer that are under pressure or anything like that, or overstocked, they really don't perform as well. You should really be spreading them out on beautiful pastures, keeping them happy. A happy deer is a good deer. And good feed, good grass. We renew our pastures all the time in the paddocks, so we're always getting the best quality grass. Well, I guess in the wild, they don't have the luxury of the grass that we put in front of them here as a farmed animal. I believe we've got some of the best English type deer in the country, if not the world. And to associate our brand with Silver Fern Farms brand works for us. Without the likes of Silver Fern Farms, then there's no point doing this. So they're very, very important for us. I'm Mark Tapley, very proud suppliers venison to Silver Fern Farms.
join us here on Sarah's Country Live, wherever you're watching or listening across the web, and of course on demand on podcasts. Produced by the crew with an alliance with the great people at Farmers Weekly, and I can see your live comments throughout. It's amazing to know who is actually watching, who never comments, and I understand, of course, it's that time of night where you're putting kids to bed and making dinner, etc. So if you never comment, I know you are still watching and listening, and I really appreciate that. Now, we are going to be joined by a very optimistic man. I'm not sure if he likes that introduction. Managing Director for NZAB. Welcome back to Sarah's Country. This is Scott Wishart. How are you this evening, sir?
Yeah, evening, Sarah. I'm really well, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. Now, it has been some time since we've talked, and in between times there's been a thing called COVID-19. How has that affected a lot of your farming clients and that appetite for risk?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So I suppose farming has been, one of the luckiest sectors in terms of direct impact. We pretty much had to carry on as usual, notwithstanding issues around supply chains and stock and feed and those other things that did cause us a few issues. But in typical farming fashion, it's just another crisis to deal with in the marathon that is farming. It's by no means a sprint. So I think we're getting pretty good at dealing with these challenges as they come towards us.
That's a very good point. You're talking here about the long game, not the short game. And this blog post is fantastic where you're talking Al Pacino, Any Given Sunday. I've been critical for so long about the short-minded cash flow nature that farming has become because the banks have demanded that. Are we getting to a point where we can have long-term strategies and long-term environmental investment with the banks backing this with the change in capital restructuring?
I still think that, I think fundamentally farmers have to have that long-term strategy and they have to understand what that looks like and be executing on it. The banking sector is still focused short because they have their own constraints around capital. They have their own annual plans they have to meet. They're a commercial business. The real challenge is how do you make a long-term intergenerational business fit in a short-term capital provided market? And I suppose we still haven't solved all of the problems there. Banking is still banking, but I think we are finding some success where, longer term strategies make sense, and we can demonstrate the value of that to the risk that the banks face. We've got clients looking at investment opportunities at the moment, whether it be development or irrigation, that can yield, 15 to 40% return on capital. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to be paying off debt instead of taking those opportunities because quite clearly they improve a business's risk. But look, there's still some challenges there, and I think we see appetite starting to return to the banking sector in some quarters, which isn't a surprise. We always see it as a cyclical sort of a business, and it's great to see. But there is still we still see a lot of capital or debt capital leaving the sector. It looks like it's heading into places like housing where the capital constraints are less and they can earn a greater return. And I still think that creates challenges for the agri sector. And I think there's two ways you can improve risk if you're a bank. One is you can improve the quality of the clients by helping them repay debt and invest in growth, or you can increase price until it matches the risk profile that you think you have. And I suppose the latter does nothing to improve farming over time. And I think that's one thing I see as the greatest opportunity at the moment is for, from the Reserve Bank down through the leadership entities of each bank, what actually is the strategy here? How do we do more than just say values are down, pay more debt back, there's too much risk here? And I think it needs to be really tangible rather than sound bites. And, because we've got a lot of really great farmers in this country that are, they do have long-term strategies and those strategies make sense, but they're going to require continual investment. And, we are going to need long-term support here.
Yeah, and talking with Susan Kilsby, the economist there at ANZ, it's very hard for these banks to gain any form of certainty to base that risk off, both from environmental legislation and what the next coalition government will look like in terms of colours, let alone some of those very interesting exchange rate impacts where we've got a very high US dollar, yet it's an extremely dodgy US economy going forward. No one's actually prepared to give any direction, anything further than a couple of months out at the moment.
And look, again, back to where we started, it's a long-term game, not a short-term game. So, I think where we want to be placed is where we can absorb those short-term changes because we've got long-term strategy and long-term metrics that make sense. So fundamentally, the work continues in the same vein it has done for a few years now, and that is making sure that you have a really good business that can weather the storms, that you are reducing debt or improving your performance in order to take risk out of the business so that it can absorb those changes that we can't control. Really test your farming models. Are you using the resources you have as efficiently as you can? Do you have the right people around you? Do you make decisions in a timely manner? And I think fundamentally, if we continue to, as Tom Lemming did say in that article, if you grab the inches, that does add up. And, our business is about 3.5 years old now, and we're finding some of those inches we've been gaining over that period of time are really starting to pay off. And, the rolling stone does start to sort of, build up a bit. And I think we're seeing that those benefits. And, it's easy to say, that there should be some wholesale changes in how banks support farmers or how farmers, present themselves. But the reality is we just need to keep making those continual changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this whole point was about optimism and where the opportunities lie for growth. There has been commentary around a falling farm sales slump. Is there opportunity there in a reset in that property market?
Look, absolutely. I mean, I think we're seeing, properties that are transacting, the yields on those opportunities are some of the better yields we've seen in a long time. And, with where interest rates are at the moment, on average, those yields are about twice the cost of capital. So, you have to be in a position where you can access those opportunities. It's a real challenge, but we're also seeing a lot of opportunities on farm with existing farms to make those investments, whether it be efficiency in irrigation or, some of the unexpected benefits of environmental policy, where we're actually seeing less inputs and not the same reduction in output that we thought we might have seen, and more efficiencies around stock and genetics. And those things are all really exciting. And talking to a lot of farmers lately who, talking about the constraints around nitrogen, and a lot of them do see it as an opportunity to think, well, if this is the market, if this is where we're heading, then how do we continue to drive the performance out of their farms? Mm-hmm. And seeing it as a challenge that they can actually get excited about. And I think that's the key.
You obviously look around internationally a lot at the risk and profile of banks internationally and other economies than ours. I was listening to some commentary around some strict protocol coming into the Canadian banks and them not much liking it. From a risk profile, are you feeling quite safe about how we are to weather the storm going into this global recession?
Well, look, I'm far from an expert around that, but from what I see and what I'm told, I think we're pretty well placed. I think the luxury we still have as a country and as a banking sector at the moment is how we invest our capital and what sort of time frame we put on our returns. And so I think that's, again, the challenge to the banking sector and the regulators in New Zealand is, let's continue to get in behind those that are producing real revenue and real GDP for the country, and make sure that we take the opportunities that are in front of us right now, because I think they are many and they're extremely valuable for New Zealand.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Managing Director for NZAB. Doug Avery has said that you're as sound as a rock, Scott, and because it's come from Uncle Doug, that's a compliment.
I've never known Doug to tell a lie, so that's absolutely true.
You'll like that one. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Now, next up on Sarah's Country, we're going to cross over to National Party spokesman for agriculture, David Bennett, who's also the chair of that Primary Production Select Committee. Of course, while we were talking about that earlier with Amy Blaikie, a Southland farmer, who's put in a petition around why isn't the government putting wall carpet and insulation in all government buildings, and of course that famous KiwiBuild. Loving your comments coming in from across the web. Ethel has said, I was in Australia for 16. Oh, you're living back here in New Zealand. Welcome home, Ethel. And Michael Ross, long-term perspective is a critical factor for all parties. Yes, perspective is one thing, but to be able to be supported for the long term is another. And Doug, Uncle Doug, has said, I love this, the greatest risk to green investments is the greens themselves. Always a fine word from you, Mr. Avery. Now, coming up on Sarah's Country, we're going to cross over to David Bennett, and we're going to be talking about this critical essential service of workers, dairy workers, and of course rural contractors stuck overseas and not back in time for a very, very busy season ahead. All that up next. This is Sarah's Country.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits,
children's chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
But at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help your farm,
grow, milk, dredge,
rear, come on in.
Because we're out here too.
Every morning, Kiwi farmers wake up to produce high quality food. Yet, every night, some Kiwi families are going to sleep hungry. Meet the Need is a charity founded by farmers, and it's here to change all that. We're about New Zealand farmers feeding New Zealand families by donating a small part of what we grow when we can. You can help us make sure no one in New Zealand goes to sleep hungry again. Visit meettheneed.org and follow us on social.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
Now, he says that the government is underestimating the size of this labour shortage of rural contractors going into the busy season. We usually require 350 foreign workers going into the season, and of course the government has announced a hefty $1.6 billion to go into training. But is that really enough when we're only a month away from calving? And calving is happening and starting to happen around the country. And of course, by the time we're getting some of that seed in the ground. Joining us now is National Party spokesman for Agriculture, David Bennett. Good evening, sir.
Hi, Sarah. How are you going?
Good, good. Now, how's your forehead against the brick wall with Liz Galloway on this issue?
Well, I think you against the whole government, you've got your forehead against the brick wall. We had Damien O'Connor in Select Committee a week or so ago, and we asked him about this very issue, and he said that the projections were that there's 350 people coming into New Zealand from overseas that are contractors each year. Now, I know my local contractor probably employs 5 or 7 of those, and I talked to other local contractors in the Tiamutu area, and we think there's probably about 100 or so just in that around that little town, you know. So if you take it across the whole country, it's probably about 2,000 would probably be a fairer representation of the number of people that come in and do the contracting work. Now, these people are highly skilled. They're operators of very expensive machinery. They know how to work under pressure, and they know how to meet farmers' demand. In response to that need, the Minister said that they're training 40 people in Queenstown at the moment that had previously driven vans and other such things in the tourism industries. But he's in la-la land. He just doesn't understand the need that's out there. He's getting very poor statistics from his department, and he's getting bad advice around what he needs to do, and they're just not taking this seriously enough. And in 2 or 3 months' time, there will be silage needing to be cut and baled, and then you've got the cropping season after that, and we just will not have the people on the ground to do that work.
Devil's advocate, though, David, it was only 3 years ago where National still valued tractor driving as a low-skilled job. And so, therefore, you know, tractors haven't miraculously got more skilled in the last 3 years. And, of course, I'd love to know what National would do in regards to opening up its borders when we're still at such risk of a COVID-free situation, and how we would manage that.
Yeah, and good questions there. Like the tractor drivers, they're dealing with the very expensive machinery and of the highest quality and very computerised and how that machinery operates, and it's high tech. And we need people that are able to drive on the road, but also are able to handle that equipment on farm and in the paddocks when they're doing the actual work. And that just doesn't come overnight. And it's an experienced job. So we need that experience and people that are going to do the work. Now, there's only really 2 options in front of the government at the moment. The first is that they train New Zealanders and enable them to get the experience so that when we have that peak season, we have people ready. And 40 people in Queenstown with the projection of only 350 needed is completely out of touch with the reality of what's needed. So the Minister should have been looking at this a month ago. He should have got out there and made sure they're training more than 350 people, and he should have actually seen what the total need was and delivered that. Now, that's if you're going to employ New Zealanders in those roles, and that's the first point of call that the government and the opposition has taken under COVID, is to try and get as many New Zealanders employed because we've got high unemployment through the country. The second option our government would have would be to have some kind of quarantine process for people coming in from overseas for those jobs. Now, this government can't even manage the quarantine process for New Zealanders returning home. So there's no way that they'll be able to manage a process for non-New Zealanders coming in either. So if we had some kind of surety around the approach this government's taking to New Zealanders returning home, then it might give us some comfort be able to open up for skilled people coming in for these kind of positions. So on both counts, you had a failing by the government of not planning ahead and getting New Zealanders into work, and also if you were going to look at getting those foreign workers in, you need the government to have done well on its border control, which it hasn't done in the last couple of weeks.
Okay, David, Uncle Doug has said that you need to come out from behind the trees and start firing some shots. I agree entirely. When is National going to get off its hands and start to release some of this COVID recovery policy? I know that Nathan Guy left it too late in my mind as the Minister of Agriculture. Now, Susan has said there that we need to be reminded of Winston's policy promise about prioritising the use of New Zealand wool in government refurbishings, and it never happened. We heard earlier about the petition that has been put forward to your Primary Production Select Committee. Are you going to start firing some shots early out from this election that support the primary sector?
Certainly we are, and we're doing that now. We're making issues around employment and immigration because the government has failed on that, and in 2 months' time, the failure will be very evident on the ground. So that's just one example of where we're attacking the government at this point in time. Also, you just have to look at what's happening coming out of government policy at the moment. The Greens released their tax policy over the weekend, and that tax policy will be very consistent with the government Labor Party tax policy, I would imagine, even if they won't tell us all about it before the election. And so we're attacking that because that policy would basically put farmers out of business in New Zealand. If there's a 3% return on a farm on a good day, and 2% of that's going to have to go to the government before you even start your business operation, there's nothing in it. And then you've got to pay your mortgage and all those other things. So when you see policies like that coming out, our job is to fight back on them, and our leader has today, Todd's come out and said that policy would just not work in New Zealand and would basically put a lot of our farming communities under immense stress and their businesses basically out of operation. And that's the kind of thing that we're getting from the government, and we're fighting back and saying that that is not the policy New Zealand wants. The policies that New Zealand want will come out during the election campaign. And at this point in time, we're seeing government policies out there that need to be countered, and we're doing that.
David, I'd love to know your opinion on free market access in terms of allowing the market to get on and get it done versus government intervention, and to what level you think that the government needs to be involved. Where I'm going with this is there's been a lot of visions and a lot of healthy sort of money being poured into reports where we haven't seen any action plans. This is Primary Sector Council vision and, of course, the Wool Working Group report. I'm led to believe that there will be no announcements of this going into the election as it's getting too close. So my question to you is, what will be your strategy to allow the markets to get on and get it done, or do you believe that the government needs to have the primary sector under its thumb?
Well, the first thing is that the New Zealand primary sector is the best in the world because we don't have any government support, and we meet our customers' demands and we meet our climatic conditions as farmers, and we don't expect the government to be able to deliver the answers, and that makes us the most competitive producers in the world, and that's why we're so successful on the world stage. That's the first point of call. So a subsidised approach is not what farmers are asking for. The second thing that's really important is that this is a government that can't deliver. It can't deliver housing, it can't deliver roading, it can't even deliver on a border. At this point in time, it can't deliver on employment. It's a government of failure, but it is a government that loves to announce things and can dress them up in nice, fluffy ways and put that out in the public community in a very appealing way. But there is no delivery behind it, and that is the problem with Damien as well. We're at the last week of a 3-year term, and suddenly the Labor Party is talking about plans for agriculture and horticulture going forward. They've had 3 years, and they've just sat there dealing with things that they haven't actually given a cohesive vision. They haven't done anything to make that vision a reality. And if they come out with a lot of words now, you can see what it's going to be. It'll be document after document. You'll go through it and you'll find hardly any detail. There'll be a lot of lovely phrases and big words that will be used to make it look like that they have the best interest of farmers at stake. The reality is we need hard and fast things done, and that's the difference between our government and theirs. When we were in government, we built the roads. When we promised things, we delivered them. These guys have been in there for 3 years. They haven't delivered anything, and now suddenly going to come up with more policies and more plans that we're supposed to believe. And I don't think that's good enough, and I don't think farmers will be sucked in by that kind of approach.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, David Bennett, the spokesman for Agriculture, the National Party. And David, we all in particular look forward to seeing what action you will take for the poor old wool industry, among other things.
Don't we all.
Yeah. Yes. Good evening, Sarah, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much. Now, coming up to close the show, we're going to stay in Wellington and be joined by the very new Vice President for Federated Farmers, Karen Williams. This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. And Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Thank you so much for taking the time to stay with us throughout Sarah's Country on your Monday evening or wherever you are listening or watching to us on demand. Now, to close the show, we're heading to Wellington, where she is waiting for us outside a glamorous function. Your new Vice President for Federated Farmers, Karen Williams, joins us on the phone now. Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Good evening, Sarah. I'm very good, thank you.
Good. I have to firstly say on behalf of all of us, congratulations on the promotion.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting times, and both Andrew and I are pretty keen to get busy quickly and put our mark on things.
Yeah, certainly. We have a countdown to a very important election, and I know you won't be taking your foot off the pedal. What are some of those massive election wishes that you've got this year?
Yeah, well, obviously, we'll work closely with the parties and talk about our issues and opportunities for agriculture and what we can bring to, every farmer at home on their farm and deliver in that space. But obviously water's a massive one, and, we'll continue sort of pushing the line of, working locally. We strongly believe broad-brushed rules can lead to all sorts of unintended consequences. So we're very keen to support catchment-based approach. And then, I guess, making that more specific with your own farm plans. And that catchment approach enables you to understand what your limitations or your problems are, as opposed to just sort of assuming it's, it's nitrogen, it's sediment, whatever it might be. You can tailor that, and then you can tailor, obviously, your response to that. Climate change, massive for us all going forward. We have the He Waka Ikanoa group that has formed, which is the industry and government partnership to address reducing agricultural emissions. And there's a massive body of work kicked off with that already, with 8 different work streams looking at things like sequestration, emissions pricing, emissions reporting. There's a Māori work stream as well. So a lot of work going in there. And that is very much so, we're not necessarily going into the emissions trading scheme, but we're going to find ways and means and solutions so that we don't have to do that, and we can reduce our emissions, transition to carbon zero, but still have really viable farming systems. So, a lot of work going on there. And trade, obviously, pushing back against protectionism and, wanting to work towards enhancing free trade agreements and getting our quality product out around the world.
Now, you're obviously not new to this role, Karen, being the Arable Chair prior to this, but also too not new to getting all parties around the table to collaborate towards a bigger mission with, of course, the world's first eradication of pea weevil under your watch. But Karen, my question to you is Federated Farmers has struggled to be at every table in a lot of these collaborative discussions. What will you do in your role as Vice President to ensure that Fed's voices are heard?
Yeah, I guess there's sort of 2 aspects to that. And that is, the first part, I guess, is building the right relationships. And it's really critical to build those strong relationships in what we call peacetime. So before there's an issue, probably a lot of people think Wellington's full of people having coffee, but having coffee with someone and talking about those issues and building that relationship has been very easy to pick up the phone when a challenge arises. So we'll continue to do that, and our board, is very strong in that regard, as well as our CE, Terry Copeland, and staff, and working on that so that we can, start to cement relationships and then deal with them. The other part to it, though, is we physically can't be in every room around the country with the enormity of things that are going on, whether it's at a national level, regional or local level. So we need to work smart. I want us to work smarter, Team Ag that is, and see, between our levy bodies and ourselves and our other industry stakeholders, how we can align on certain issues. We're never going to agree necessarily on everything, but align on that and spend the farmer dollar or the farmer resource very, very wisely. So, that's something we're pretty keen on doing too.
Do you have a couple of tops, 1, 2 or 3 things that you would really like to achieve in your tenure?
I want to grow membership. That's really important to me. There's a lot of work gets done on behalf of farmers, and I don't think that's greatly understood. And that's no one's particular fault. It's just some of the grunty policy work that goes on. People are just busy in their day and they don't want to know the ins and outs of that. But we're sort of exploring as a board how we can maybe embrace some different campaigns where we see delivery on things that aren't necessarily about policy, such as improved telecommunications, which I think, during COVID lockdown, that sort of resonated with all of us that live rurally, whether we're farmers or not. I know for myself, trying to stay on Zoom calls along with 3 school-age children, all trying to do their schooling on Zoom, and, we could it one at a time was pretty much where it's at. And certainly when we look at, the environmental initiatives and reporting and monitoring of let's say, our emissions, we need that rural connectivity so we can do it in the paddock and be more effective. So, really keen to sort of embrace some of those campaigns. I want us to be the respected voice of farming and be at the tables. We have had instances in the last year or so where the doors have been closed to us. So we need to work hard to get back in there and continue to share the farmer voice. But we also need to be really open-minded to the possibilities of change and smarter ways of doing things. And I think, our membership is up for that. But it's very much that engagement needs to include the why. Why change? Why do we need to do this differently? And I think if the communication and engagement plans are good, we will take farmers on the journey to understand where they need to change. But we also have some amazing farmers who are doing such a good job, and we need to highlight them and show what's possible and give them the support to keep on going, even when they're faced with all sorts of adversity, whether it's obviously coming off the drought, which has been really tough for some people, and throwing in COVID in there, and uncertain global times as well.
Karen, I'm just going to make the most of this opportunity. I know we're going to talk to you multiple times, but I have the wonderful privilege of talking to the beautiful Lindy Nelson tomorrow on the show, of which I know you know. And I hate playing the woman card. But I do actually want to ask you, because I know your background and how you've come through this to this particular position. And it's just one worth celebrating. Could you please give one word of advice to women that, went, oh shit, I fell for a farmer. Right, now what? And that their life is not over and there's a wealth of opportunity to be involved and dig in.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a case in point for that. So, with a resource management background, grew up in town, married a farmer, and then when it got pretty busy on farm with kids, and farm sort of started going along to various agricultural meetings with regional council processes and stuff, and started to sort of embrace that. And I know a number of women that married into farming are doing the same. So just, believe in yourself, and, you are adding value. Someone told me recently that they joined Feds, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And she said, Karen, I wanted to join a couple of years ago, but I felt that I didn't sort of walk, talk or smell like a farmer. So I was really reluctant to join. So I want women out there to know that there's no particular way to dress or smell as it like you've come out of the yard, perhaps. We need all the skill sets that we can. There's a wave or a deluge of things coming at us. We want to broaden our skills and assist our men. They can't be across everything. The partnership is certainly the way forward, and a lot of those skills and that confidence to get involved has come through from my exposure to Agri Women's Development Trust and their Escalator program. So I highly recommend connecting through the trust and seeing what they can do for you, and then you can pay forward to the ag industry.
Oh, what a beautiful way to end it. Thank you so much. I'll let you go and have your bubbles with Jacinda, Karen, and carry on your evening. I really appreciate you stepping out to talk to us tonight on Serious Country. And this is the first and will not be the last, I know. That's Karen Williams, our new Vice President for Federated Farmers. Now, that's all we've got time for tonight on Serious Country. If you'd like to drop me an email at any time, sarah@periummedia.com. All of the stories that we talk about is brought by the experience of the wonderful agricultural journalists and analysts at Farmers Weekly. Head to farmersweekly.co.nz and ensure that you grab your copy out of your rural delivery mailbox. It'll be probably in there tomorrow. I'd like to say thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Your busy evening, or wherever you are listening to us on demand on podcast. I'd like to say tonight, good night and go well, because at the end of the day, we live in absolute paradise, and we have so much optimism ahead for our future here in this recovery.
This is Sarah's Country.